Right now, without even realizing it, you are measuring yourself against someone else. Maybe it is the person next to you on the train. Maybe it is a face on your phone screen. Maybe it is someone from your past who somehow got further ahead than you thought they would. You do not decide to do this. It just happens. And the moment you notice it, you feel a little ashamed. Like something is wrong with you. But nothing is wrong with you. What you are doing is one of the oldest, most deeply wired behaviors in the entire human animal. It did not start with social media. It did not start with capitalism. It started long before any of that. In a world where comparing yourself to others was not a habit, it was a survival skill. Here is what is actually going on inside you when you size yourself up against someone else. Your brain has a system, not a metaphor for a system. An actual documented neural architecture that monitors your relative social standing in real time. Researchers call it the social comparison network. It runs continuously, quietly, in the background of everything you do. And it was not built for the world you live in. It was built for a world that no longer exists. Go back roughly 200,000 years. Your ancestors lived in small bands, 50 people, maybe 100. Everyone knew everyone. And in that world, your rank within the group was not a matter of ego. It was a matter of life and death. If you were high-ranking, you got first access to food, to mates, to shelter, to safety. If you were low-ranking, you waited. Sometimes you waited too long. The individuals who obsessively tracked their position in the hierarchy, who noticed every shift in status, who felt a spike of alarm when someone else moved ahead, those were the ones who survived. Their anxiety was adaptive. It kept them alert. And you are their descendant. You inherited that alarm system wholesale. Leon Festinger first described this in 1954. He called it social comparison theory. His argument was simple but radical. Humans do not evaluate themselves in a vacuum. They evaluate themselves in relation to others. And this is not a flaw in the design. It is the design. You need a reference point to know where you stand. The question was never whether you would compare. The question was always who you would compare yourself to. And here is where it gets interesting. Festinger noticed that people almost never compare themselves to just anyone. They compare themselves to people who are similar. Same age, same field, same general life stage. A beginning artist does not lie awake at night tormented by the output of a master who has been painting for 40 years. They lie awake tormented by the artist in their same class who just got a gallery showing. Your brain is not looking for the absolute measure of your worth. It is doing something more specific. It is trying to figure out how you rank among people who started from the same place you did. Because in the ancestral environment, that is who you were actually competing with. This is why a promotion feels less satisfying when a colleague gets promoted at the same time. This is why a salary raise can make you feel worse if you find out someone with your same job title earns more. Objectively, your situation improved, but your brain did not evolve. But here is the counterintuitive twist. Downward comparison is not as stabilizing as it feels. Research by Wills showed that people who rely heavily on downward comparison to regulate their self-esteem tend to have more fragile self-esteem overall, not less. The relief is real. But it requires an ongoing supply of people you can feel better than. And when that supply disappears, when the person you compared down to suddenly surpasses you, the fall is sharp. Now take everything you just learned about 200,000 years of evolution and Festinger's 1954 theory and Wills and Wood's decades of work and place it inside a smartphone. Because that is what happened about 15 years ago. And nobody was ready for it. Your brain evolved to monitor the status of 50 to 100 people. People you could actually see. People whose lives you could accurately read. You knew who was struggling. You knew who was thriving. The information was honest because it came from direct contact. There was no curation. Nobody performed their best moments and hid the rest. Life was visible in full. Then you handed your ancient social comparison system a feed of thousands of people, each showing only their highlights, their vacations, their achievements, their clearest skin, and their best angles. Not because they are lying to you, because every human being has always presented a curated version of themselves to their community. That is also ancient behavior. What changed is the scale. Your brain is now running a 50-person monitoring system on a network of thousands, and it cannot tell the difference. It treats every post like the honest signal it would have received from someone in the band. It takes the highlight reel at face value, and then it updates your sense of relative position downward accordingly. This is not weakness. It is a completely predictable output of ancient hardware running on a world it was not designed for. Researcher Ethan Cross at the University of Michigan has spent years tracking what passive social media use does to mood. Passive meaning you scroll, you observe, you do not engage. And what his work consistently shows is that the more you passively consume other people's curated lives, the worse you feel about your own. Not because your life got worse, because the reference point you are measuring against is now a distortion, an impossible average built from everyone's best moments. Here is the other thing worth knowing. The comparison does not stay rational. You cannot simply remind yourself that you are seeing highlights. Your brain does not process the correction fast enough. The emotional response, the status alarm, the spike of inadequacy that fires before the logical correction can arrive. Neuroscientists call this the amygdala's head start. The emotional brain processes threat signals faster than the prefrontal cortex can contextualize them. By the time you think rationally that this is just someone's curated post, the feeling is already there. You are already behind. And this is the part nobody tells you. The discomfort you feel when you compare yourself to someone else is not evidence that you are inadequate. It is evidence that you are alive. It is your nervous system doing exactly what it was shaped over hundreds of thousands of years to do. The alarm works. It just does not know that the threat is no longer real. It cannot distinguish between a rival in the same band moving ahead of you in the food hierarchy, a situation that genuinely required your alarm, and a stranger on your phone having a better vacation. Both trigger the same system. Both feel like danger. What changes when you understand this is not the comparison. The comparison will keep happening. What changes is what you do with it. You can start to notice the direction. You can ask whether the person you are comparing yourself to is actually similar to you in the way Festinger described, or whether you are holding yourself up against someone in a completely different context with a completely different starting point. You can learn to treat upward comparison as information rather than verdict, a signal pointing towards something you want, not proof that you are lacking. You can also ask a question your ancestors never had to ask: is the information I am comparing against real? Because for the first time in 200,000 years, the answer might be no. You were built to measure yourself against others. That drive is as old as the species. But you were not built for a world where every person you have ever met and millions you have never met are all broadcasting their finest hours at once. You are navigating something genuinely new with hardware that is genuinely old. And so is everyone else on that feed. The comparison will come. The question is whether you will believe the story it tells you about yourself, or whether, knowing what you now know, you will choose to write a different one.